Folks, you've heard it a million times. I know you have. Christians don't get involved in politics. Politics is dirty. Politics is yucky. Jesus didn't get involved in politics, so you should sit back and do nothing as evil takes over your country and castrates your children and murders your grandbabies in taxpayer-funded abortions. We've all heard it. I know we have, because it is absolutely ubiquitous, especially among conservative Christians. But our next guest, my friend Neil Mammen, he's got an incredible book that will lay to rest forever this ridiculous lie from the pit of hell. It's called Jesus Was, no scratch that, is involved in politics. Why aren't you? Why isn't your church? The only way to a happier, healthier, safer, and mutually prosperous America. Folks, I read a lot of books, and I don't say this about a lot of books, but this is a must read. Neil, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm honored to be here.
It is great to have you, Neil. And you and I have known each other for a few years now. We go to all the Liberty Pastors Summits, and I'm very grateful that you're now sharing this message with pastors across the country. You do so many things. You've been involved in tech. You're an engineer. You've designed all kinds of cool technologies. And I think this is one of the most important books that I've read in a long time. So let's just start with the basics. Should Christians be involved in politics, and was Jesus involved in politics?
Well, this all started when I was teaching about Christians in politics, and somebody said, well, Jesus wasn't involved in politics. He never went to Rome and told the Romans what to do or voted in the Roman elections. And I thought, I need to write a book on this called Jesus is Involved in Politics. So the idea, let's start with first whether Jesus was involved in politics. And if he was, then maybe we should be too, right? We're supposed to emulate him. Well, it turns out that, he wasn't going to get involved in Roman politics because he wasn't a Roman citizen. I mean, and I always give the example of, while we were governing Iraq, could an Iraqi citizen come and vote in our election, or could they come and get our politicians to do something? And the answer is yes, if they were paying Hillary Clinton or voting with that. But the question is, should they be voting? Right? And the answer is no, they shouldn't be voting. They shouldn't be involved in our politics. And the same way, Jesus could not be involved with the Romans because the Romans were governing Judea. So now the question is, did the Romans run? I mean, you always have to have politics. And so after the Romans took over Judea, did they run it with the political system? Well, no, they couldn't, because they had 100 different countries. They didn't even have enough soldiers. They were hiring mercenaries from one country to control another country. And so in the same way, when we were governing Iraq, there was no way we could do all the local politics. So you keep the local systems in place. And we saw that with the Iraqi elections and all those other things. So in the same way, the Romans kept the Jewish system, the Judean system in place. And so the question is, did the Jews have politics? Well, the answer is yes. They had their local politics. Now, remember, they had the Torah, which was their constitution, and then they could legislate things below the Torah, but they couldn't violate the Torah. Very similar to our constitution, right? You can legislate to a certain point, but you can't violate your constitution. So, and who were these people who made their law? Well, they were called the Sanhedrin, as most of us know, and the Sanhedrin. Now, people think the Sanhedrin were priests. Well, except for the high priest who led it. He was the chief judge in a sense, like taking Moses' or Aaron's place. Although Moses was the executive branch, so it would be Aaron's place. Then there was a vice chief justice, but then there was about 70 elders, 70 appointees, 70 political leaders. And these guys were supposed to come from basically what Exodus tells us, Exodus 18, which, by the way, most people don't realize is the very first time we see a republic in the history of the world. I play a trick question. I say, where did mankind get the idea for a republic first? Did it come from the Romans? Did it come from the Greeks? And everybody says Greeks, so they go back to Babylon or something. I go, no. The very first republic that we ever see in the history of mankind was not Nebuchadnezzar. It was Moses, long before any of that. And it was in Exodus 18 where it says every 10 families were supposed to appoint one, who were then supposed to appoint 50, who were supposed to 100, and goes all the way to the top. And so this was their election system. And right at the top, these were not Levites. Right at the top, these were other judges or elected people who would make their laws. So these were the Sanhedrin. They were not Levites. So there could be anything. So the question is, who were these people, and did Jesus ever talk to them? And hopefully everybody listening is about 10 seconds away ahead of me right now. Who were these people? Well, of course, they were the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And suddenly we realize that Jesus' senators, Jesus' representatives, were the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and he talked to them all the time. In fact, you can't even preach the gospel without quoting what Jesus said to Senator Nicodemus, right? You should love the Lord. I mean, you can't be, unless you're born again, you can't see the kingdom of God, right? And so it says, we realize that Jesus was talking to these people. And then I always make this joke. I go, well, but he was always nice to them, wasn't he? He would never call them dirty pit of vipers, you stinking graves, who will save you from hell? No, he was involved in them on a daily basis. And so we see that if Jesus was involved in politics, we should be involved in politics. Let me go one step further. Remember what the very first Republican system ever set up was Moses, and we copied that for our Republican system. And in that system, 1 in 10 people was supposed to be an appointed position of leadership. So I always say, go to church on Sunday, count down. If you see 9 people in your row and none of them are politicians, you need to be the one.
Yep. And Neil, you also make a really important point in your book that you didn't mention right now, and that's that even if Jesus wasn't involved in politics, which I think you just proved absolutely conclusively that he was, but even if he wasn't, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be involved in politics necessarily.
Absolutely.
Jesus didn't get married, as you say in your book, and yet we are encouraged to get married and have children and all of that good stuff. So, this is a really, really important book here that I think every Christian who reads it will come away understanding that, oh, wow, we have been duped massively. Jesus absolutely was involved in politics. Neil, one of the things that you argue very strongly in your book is that we should, in fact, be legislating morality, contrary to this popular fake wisdom that, oh, no, we don't want to impose morality on anybody. You make the point that everybody is always imposing morality through the government.
Yeah.
The question is, whose morality are we going to impose? And you make a very good case that, we don't want a theocracy, but we do want God's moral laws to be legislated for the benefit of our friends and neighbors and people around us because we love them. Talk a little bit about that. I know you spent chapters and chapters on this, apologetics, it's excellent, but give us the short version. Why should we want to impose biblical morality on others? And how should we make those arguments to people?
So the primary thing is that we should understand, why did God give us the laws? He gave us the laws not to protect himself. He's not going up saying up there, oh, no, you violated the Sabbath, I'm feeling hurt, right? It's for our own good. Don't blaspheme. It's for our own good. But if you look at the laws, they're broken up into 2 sets. And this is obvious. We know this. The first 4 are love the Lord your God, or first 3, depending on how you separate them. But the last 6 are basically love your neighbor as yourself. Be good to them. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lust, all that stuff. So it's really love the Lord your God and love your neighbor. So the love your neighbor part, why does he do that? He does that because he doesn't want us to hurt each other. Just like a mom, don't hit your brother. Don't be mean.
Don't take his stuff.
Yeah, don't take his stuff, And so God he loves his children. He wants us to get along. So every single law is given to protect us. So now the question is, what would happen if we legislate against God's law? If we violate God's law? Well, then we're going to get slavery. We're going to get all these, we're going to get violence. We're going to get murder in the streets. We're going to get all these bad things. So all laws that God has given need to be legislated in our country, and Christians have done that. In fact, I gave you the example of slavery. Over the last 2,000 years, and I'm just giving a short list. The rest of it, a lot of it is in the book, is we stopped slavery. We stopped gladiatorial combat. We stopped death games, which are 2 different things. We stopped prostitution of young girls. We stopped temple prostitution. We stopped the abandonment of elders in the wild. We stopped baby abandonment. We, in fact, did we stopped child labor. We stopped
child sacrifice.
Child sacrifice, and also the killing of twins. In Africa, they were killing twins. And then in India, they would throw a woman on her husband's funeral pyre because the Hindus believed that was a good thing. And so they would kill this young widow because her husband died. And we stopped that. So let me ask you this. At what point should we have said, no, go ahead and kill your women on funeral pyres? It's okay, because who are we to impose God's laws on you? Right? I mean, here's the thing. Here's what most Christians don't understand. We have changed the culture so much so that the culture agrees with us. And I can go to an atheist and says, do you want child sacrifice? Well, they don't call it, but we do know they do in some cases. But do you want child prostitution? That's a bit less controversial because, of course, they want to think of abortion. But do you want to stop child labor? They'll say yes. Why? Because we've changed the culture so much that atheists have adopted our moral capital and apply it to their worldview. And so the more we change the laws, the more in line will the world, with God's laws, will the world become. And the more we back off, the more pagan it goes. And a great example is Germany. Here's the seat of the Reformation. And when Christians were involved, Germany was rising up in moral laws, and they were getting, they were improving, you would say. And suddenly the Christians backed off, and they said, Hitler, you take care of it. You take care of the laws. And Germany returned to its pagan roots.
Yeah.
You asked me a couple of questions. I don't know if I answered all of them.
No, that was brilliant, Neil. Thank you for that. And you make a really important point in this book, and it actually caused me to think a little bit, because I think instinctively a lot of Christians say, "Well, because God said so," kind of like parents.
Oh yeah.
And you make an important point in this book that that isn't going to work necessarily for unbelievers or for pagans. We ought to also be able to support our position from data, from evidence, from studies showing, for example, that divorce hurts children, and in fact the parties to the divorce, that abortion is in fact the killing of an innocent human being. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think a lot of Christians just say, well, no, God said so, that's all we need to know. And for us as Christians, yes, that's all we need to know, but for the world, for the unbelievers, we need a little bit more, and you argue that that's actually really important. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think it's critically important because, first of all, when you're trying to change the culture, and let's say you're trying to stop slavery, you can't say, well, we got to get everybody to become Christians and then automatically believe slavery is wrong, which didn't work anyway because a lot of Christians were Christians and didn't believe slavery was wrong, as we can see in the South, right? So first of all, you've got to be able to argue logically and rationally to a non-Christian as well as a Christian as to why something's wrong. So abortion, for instance, I think and science has lent itself to us really well because we're the ones who discovered science and invented science in many cases. It's the priests and the people who did the biology and the physics and all were monks and priests and Christians. So if you go to a non-Christian and you say, well, killing a baby is murder, the non-Christian is going to say, no, it isn't. It's just a piece of some cells. But if you can go through and you can say, no, it's got its own DNA, it's physically smaller, that's about it. Its level of development is different, but that doesn't decide humanity. And its degree of dependency is high, but that doesn't define humanity too, because we know people who are paralyzed and need a machine to breathe. They're still human. We know little babies who are 2 days old and they're still human. So you start making these logical arguments, and it's very critical because then the atheist can't say, well, that's what you believe. No, it's not what I believe. It's what I just argued with you, and I gave you a reasonable argument. The only way you can refute my argument is to show my facts are wrong or my logic is wrong. And by the way, if you ever get an argument and somebody calls your name, say, no, I made an argument. The only way you can refute my argument is two things. Show my facts are wrong, or you have to show my logic is wrong. Everything else is a fallacy. And now you're in a much more powerful place to make that decision. And guess what? We want atheists to agree that abortion is wrong too. And I don't want to spend the time trying to make them a Christian, or I don't make them a Christian, God does, but lead them to Christ, because they may never be led to Christ. We know that. But I do want them, and there are many atheists, even some of the hardcore atheists like Christopher Hitchens, hardcore atheists, pro-life, because the argument had been made to him and he believed it.
Yep. Yeah, you made a really compelling case for that, Neil. And what I like about your book, well, one of the many things I like about your book is how you use a lot of apologetics. You're using evidence, logic, reason, very well thought out arguments to make these cases. And you encourage all Christians to want to do that as well. I think it's really important. And I know that's one of your passions. You've got a ministry that deals with that, noblindfaith.com. I want to read some of the endorsements here real quick. Just some of the people who've endorsed this book. Really incredible. Some friends here, Kevin and Sam Sorbo, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association, Tony Perkins, head of the Family Research Council, Dr. Frank Turek, cross-examined, Brad Dacus, the wonderful founder and president of the Pacific Justice Institute. You've got a lot of really prominent people who have endorsed this book, Neil. And we're down to just a few minutes left. I don't want to give the whole book away, folks, but I do want to encourage you to get a copy for your pastors. And the next time you hear somebody say Jesus wasn't involved in politics, I want you to realize that's not true. But, Neil, you have a fascinating background in history yourself. I was in India some months ago and found out that Thomas, the apostle, had actually gone there and planted churches and made disciples. And you trace your own family's Christian background almost back 2,000 years to that. You had a very unique upbringing. You lived all over the Middle East. You grew up in Yemen and Sudan. So you saw what Christian persecution looks like up close. Just share with us a little bit about your family's history and your own personal history and how you landed in America and how your views changed over time on things like capitalism and free markets.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, even though, so my parents came from a Christian family, who came from a Christian family, as you say, we dated all back to 51 AD. And so we came, we were infused in that. But what was interesting is that my father's generation ended up all being Marxists. Very interesting enough. In fact, my dad, even though his father was a lay preacher and was very instrumental in the church, not a pastor, but a lay preacher, my dad ended up being an atheist and a Marxist. And in fact, we have some very famous Marxists in our family who are very significant in the World Council of Churches and in the Marxist movement in India. And so, and Indians tend to be very socialistic. They think the government's supposed to take care of you. So when I came to America, and one of the ways I talk about this in the book, the first time I tried to come to America, my dad, by the way, had become a Christian by the time I was 5. So, but we still had this Marxist influence, and we talked about all these things. So when I first tried to come to America, it was we weren't able to because my dad had apparently given a Muslim a Bible. And so one of the problems is, and this was our source of income, he was flown out of the country. In fact, we had to leave the country within 2 weeks because the mullahs were going to come and execute him. And it was a very emotionally charged, dangerous time in our lives. But we understood Sharia law personally at that time, despite what the politicians thought, because they were on our side. So coming here, I was a socialist, and then I started losing arguments with all my American friends, arguments about this, arguments that. And I finally said, man, I know that Christianity is true because I can argue that, but I can't argue this capitalism thing. And eventually I realized that I just got it wrong. And so the book talks about my transition from the socialistic view about the government taking care of people to what the free market really is.
Wow. It's a fascinating book, and it's a fascinating personal story that you weave into it, Neil. I want to thank you for writing this. I want to thank you for doing the research behind it. What is the easiest and best way for people to get a copy of this if they want to get one?
Well, the easiest way is to go to Amazon and look up Neil Mammen, M-A-M-M-E-N, or you can go to JesusIsInvolvedInPolitics.com. We have quantity discounts there. We also have a version that you can do a small group Bible study. It's a 6-week series with a small group Bible study, reading a few pages every day. So that's one of them. The other one, I do want to push our other website that we're working on right now is to get kids out of public schools. And if you go to reviveacademies.com, we call it the Uber of schools because any church can start a micro school in a day, because we do all the handling, the hiring, and all that stuff is done through the app. You just provide the place as the church. Parents just drop their kids off, and teachers homeschool moms can make up to $90,000 a year just by teaching other people's kids. I don't know if you want to teach 25 kids, but if you're willing to teach 25 other kids, you could make $90,000 a year. So we want to encourage you to go to that website, check it out, sign up. But JesusIsInvolvedInPolitics.com.
JesusIsInvolvedInPolitics.com. And Neil, you know very well that one of my passions is getting children out of government schools. So, folks, really important. Jesus was involved in politics. He is involved in politics. And if your children are trapped in a government brainwash school, there are solutions to all that. Neil Mammen, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for writing this book. I hope we can talk to you again very soon. Appreciate very much what you do.
I would be honored to. Thank you so much, Alan. Appreciate your friendship.
Thank you so much, Neil. All right, folks, that's all we have time for today. But I'm telling you, if you are one of those many, many Christians who bought into the lie that Jesus was not involved in politics, you need the information in here. If your pastor is one of those people, they need the information in this book. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Conversations That Matter. I am Alex Newman, your host, senior editor at The New American Magazine. You can find more at thenewamerican.com. You can also check out our friends at Freedom Project Academy. If you are interested in getting your children out of the government schools, there is a lot of reasons to do so. We'll save those for another day. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, we appreciate you. God bless you all.
All right, parents, listen up. We've all seen the countless examples of how radical leftists have been destroying American schools. It's no longer just about the terrible math and reading levels. Now radical left teachers birthed from liberal universities are forcing gender indoctrination in kindergarten. They're teaching lessons on white guilt.
Freedom Project Academy has perfected live online learning over the course of a decade. I get a ton of great feedback about this program, a ton.
They're built on Judeo-Christian values, a classical curriculum. What does that mean? It means they're taught, your children are taught the way that the founding generations of the country. My own son Noah did Freedom Project Academy for several years when he was younger.
The more we tell our friends about these things, the more people will get on board, and I believe that we can be the catalyst to some real change.
We must save the West. Our way of life and our culture is under attack, and because of patriots like you and your project, I have optimism for the future.